for joining. Today we have a really open agenda. We wanted to leave it really open for any questions that you're running into related to the application process of actually selecting programs based on the rubrics. Anything you've noticed related to requisitions and transfers. We can go into a little bit more detail around quality improvement spending from a demo perspective, and I know we've also gotten a lot of questions about approved vendors and how the vendors will work through Sugar, so we can definitely go through that. But we thought we'd start the call just, with a general open question of how are things going, particularly related to selecting your programs, sending the program MOUs, and finalizing your requisition values. Does anyone want to jump in with any questions or comments? You're welcome to chat in or unmute yourself, and then you can speak. So looks like Katie is saying yes, but we're not sure what you're saying yes to. So do you have some questions, Katie? And okay, great. So you can actually unmute yourself by pressing the orange unmute button right next to your name. Let's see if I can. Are you there, Katie? We are not hearing you if you are talking. But it looks like you are unmuted on our side. Okay, so it looks like you don't have a mic on your laptop, so you're welcome to chat in your question. Or if anyone else has any questions, you're also welcome to chat in your questions or unmute yourself, and you can also talk your questions, speak your questions. Well, I know that we have gotten a question about where you can enter the application scores. So we can go through that maybe really quickly. So on the Sugar Training Guides page, we kind of put in chronological order all the different guides, and there is a quick guide to scoring applications with a rubric. So I thought I'd pull that up. It's actually only 2 pages, so one of our shortest guides. And so on here it gives you an overview of how the application process works and how it generates requisitions. Waiting for the applications to close is the first step. Running the application scoring reports is the second step, and that should have all the criteria you really need to score your applications based on the rubric, other than any comments or insights you have from like a selection committee or a group of people who are helping make the decision on who should be funded and at what level, if you are changing the levels of funding at all. Step 3 is actually scoring the applications using the program rubrics. So there's links to the rubrics here. And you're welcome to use the high need score to prioritize sites. That is a score that is calculated directly by the Office of Early Childhood using census tract data in addition to the self-reported data, because as you have probably noticed, a lot of the Colorado Shines data fields are optional. So we are seeing that people have not completed all of the various high needs data fields, in addition to things like selecting whether or not they're a Head Start site and things like that. So we are working on with the state to actually make sure we get that information from authoritative sources and are putting that information into Salesforce so that it flows down to Sugar, but that's still a work in progress. Of course, CCAP is authoritative through the mean CCAP enrollment number, but Head Start is currently self-reported through the Colorado Shines application. So you may even have a Head Start site who didn't actually select that they are a Head Start site through their Colorado Shines application. So just something to watch out for. And then in order to enter the score, you can actually enter the score on the application tab itself. So if we go into an application here, and I'll just pull up any application, you can actually come over to the internal use only rubric scores. You can put in any notes you'd like to put in. That will pull into the reports that we just talked about. You can check whether or not the rubric applies. If they're renewing, it's not required. And then the rubric score, you can just type in the number here. And what's nice about that is if you enter this information here, then when you go back to reports and want to enter the rubric scores, you can actually come back here and you can see there's a place for those scores to go, rubric score right here. And you can also see your requisition status and your requisition values. So if you export this into Excel, you can add up, you can sum all the requisitions that you've approved or all the requisitions that you're thinking about approving, and make sure that it's within your approved OEC budget. Because Sugar isn't authorizing you to spend more money than what's in your approved budget. So you really want to make sure that you are within the direct quality improvement portion of your each of your OEC grant budgets. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. We have gotten that question a couple of times, so definitely take a look at this document. It really is helpful in walking you through step by step. It also tells you how to waitlist applicants, reject applicants, or send the MOUs to applicants with links to a whole nother module guide on sending the MOUs and what you might run into there. So looks like Katie did type in her question. Okay, so Katie is saying we are finding duplicates of the exact same applications and provider requisitions. Can we delete these? Also, we have seen different statuses for the same duplicate MOU. So do you have any examples of sites, Katie, that we can look at on the call? Because there is a known reason for that to happen, and it's if a provider site is logged into Colorado Shines and goes through the iframe to our EC Connect QI application and then decides to open it in a new tab at exactly the same moment, which we have seen people, then it will generate two applications at the exact same time. But it's pretty rare, and so there isn't really a fix for that because you can't prevent someone from opening it in a new tab. If they were to log out of Colorado Shines and log back in, then they wouldn't be able to generate a duplicate after that moment because they already have one that's existing. But if they happen to try and create it at exactly the same time, then that has been known to happen. So if that's the case, there's usually one that's completely not complete, like there are no fields in it. So you would get rid of that one and keep the one that has all the information in it. So let's see. So Katie, if you could type in the sites that you are talking about and we can take a look. And then as a follow-up question, she's also asking, what does the status in process mean when related to an MOU? So in process is not an MOU status. It means that the site has been working on their quality improvement application but did not submit it. So in process is kind of the step before submit, and then once it's submitted, then you can send the MOU, or you can waitlist, or you can reject. And so it is not related to the MOU. Okay, so but Katie, if you could type in the provider sites, and we can take a look at that before moving on to another question on the coaching assessment process. Maybe while she's typing that in, I would really encourage everyone to take a look at this module guide if you have questions about the statuses in the application module. There's one table in particular that's really helpful. A lot of the statuses in the application module are iterative, and so they create an action when you change the status to that. So when you change the status to send MOU, then it will, as soon as you hit save, it will say MOU out for signature, or if there's something wrong, it will say MOU error, and then it will tell you what you need to fix in order to allow the MOU to send. Most of the time when there's an MOU error, it has something to do with the primary contact on the account record. Maybe they have a duplicate email address, maybe they don't have an email address at all. So that's usually what the error is about, but it will send you a little message. It will give you a little message in the status details for that. So please take a look at this if you haven't already, because it also gives information on how to waitlist and reject sites. And as a reminder, these statuses do not generate any notice to a provider. So if you waitlist or reject a site, then you do need to contact them as the council to let them know that they've been waitlisted or let them know that they've been rejected. And we just felt that that was a better handled on a case-by-case basis without sort of an auto-generated message or anything like that. Okay, so Katie is asking, how do we delete the extra application that might be empty? We're searching for a site. Actually, let's see if I can find one. So, Katie, what council are you in? AC. Okay, great. So I'm going to find let's see if we can find any duplicates here. I'm going to sort by application name, so it should make it pretty obvious if there are any duplicates. Like it looks like here's one, Tiny Tot, Summer Valley, City of Aurora, and one is submitted and one is in process. So I'm guessing just from the statuses that this in process application is probably the one that's empty. So I'm going to right-click and open link in a new tab, and right-click and open link in a new tab so I can compare the two applications. So if I come over here, this is in process. It is giving the organization overview, but that's just what dumps in from Colorado Shines. But it doesn't have any of the CDHSQI questions. So we know that this application is the one that was a redundant application. So then we're going to come back over here. And as you can see, it just as we talked about, this was generated at 2:47 p.m. This one was generated at 2:46 p.m. So basically what happened is the site decided to open the application in a new tab, and by doing that was able to, at exactly the same moment, create two applications. In all other circumstances, we have logic in place to prevent a duplicate application, but we can't prevent that particular process. So, like I said, we're going to keep the one that is submitted, and the submitted one does have the requisitions still, so that's great. So if you ever need to delete an application, and most of the time you can just keep an application as historical reference, but if you really need to delete one as a duplicate, what you would do first so that you get rid of the requisitions is you'd come in here and you'd reject the application. So we're going to remove assets and reject and hit save. And by doing that, it's going to switch to rejected, and then my requisitions will be removed once I refresh the page. So now I'm safe to go ahead and come in here and delete this whole record. And I need to check permissions to make sure that councils have the ability to delete, because we may have taken that out of the permission set for councils. But I will double check that and let everyone know. And we can also look for, we've been trying to look for these duplicates and clean them up as well. So permission to delete. And then we have a follow-up question, which is, where did you generate that list? So for all of the modules, if I come up to the module, there are a couple of different options. So I can create an application, which I would never do because it's created through EasyConnect. or I can view applications. So if I view applications, I come in here, it will automatically set me up with a list of everything that I have the ability to view in applications. So a lot of times what you need to do is create a filter so that you can find what you're looking for. So in this case, I've set a filter on funding stream is RTTQI-ACECC so that I could just quickly go down and see if there were any duplicates. So that's one way to do it, but you can also, there's a lot of different fields that you can search by up here. You can actually search by the actual provider site, so you could say is, you know, whomever you're looking for, and then you can search by just that one site. You can search by the status. So if I want to look for anything that has a current MOU error, so I can see there are 3 in Olive Sugar that have an MOU error, and it's related to the Baby Haven. So you may have noticed that we, if you think we've been trying to kind of proactively find any MOU errors and help fix them, because we know people have had some issues with like duplicate email addresses, or that's primarily the one that we've been looking at. So sometimes at night we'll kind of go through, find anything that's causing a problem and fix it proactively without you submitting a support ticket, just so that we can move things along. So every now and then you look and see on a particular application record that maybe the last modified was actually my username, and that's because I'm trying to go through and help clean up anything that's causing you pain points. Trying to be proactive about that. So, Katie, are there any other questions around the applications and duplicate applications? Have other people been experiencing this duplicate application error? Okay, good. I think we've been trying to clean those up as they happen, so that's good to know that not too many people have seen that. So if everybody's okay with the application, the scoring of the rubrics, and that process, then we do have another question that just came in about the coaching assessment process from Mara. So Mara, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and talk into the phone, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember, is it the coaching sessions and the coaching details? Is that where you put where in the coaching assessment you are when you're trying to figure out where they, yeah. Because I thought there was a spot when you're doing your coaching assessment that's where you log where you're at the coaching. There's a spot where you need to put where you're at during the assessment. And so can you point me to where you find that coaching readiness assessment? Is it on Trello?
Yes. So if you go to Trello and you kind of look, there's a complete coaching readiness assessment and record coaching logs. And there's a whole bunch of really nice information on here. And the very first one has all the important documents that you might need to support this process. So this one is actually really nice. It's what to expect from your first coaching visit, and it's sort of a, it was originally targeting sort of a provider, but it's just an example of something that you can provide to your site or your coaches that kind of walk through the steps with them. And then there's also the L3 through 5 process timeline of when they need to submit for a rating from a timeline perspective. And then there's the really important piece is the readiness guide. And there are 2 readiness guides. There's one for child care centers, the CC, and there's one for family child care. So you want to look at those 2. This is actually going to be what you look at to actually complete the scores. So when you look at the very last page,
yeah, that's what I was
when you look at the last page, these are the sugar fields. So workforce qualification and professional development is right here. Right here. So you can see workforce qualification and professional development. So this is where you put in the score.
Okay.
And so, over here, it really matches exactly. So if you're more comfortable taking a printout of this guide and writing in the points as you're coaching, and then you can come back and enter your coaching log, you can do it that way, especially because sometimes this takes more than one coaching session.
Right.
So we've been seeing an average of, well, it's sort of a range between 2 hours to 5 hours to complete the coaching assessment. And one of the things that takes a really long time is the workforce qualifications score, because you actually kind of need a lot of documentation to score that appropriately. Potentially someone else on the call, maybe Michelle, Kelly is out of the office today, could speak to a little bit sort of what the idea is behind the workforce qualifications, because I think the idea is that you don't want to spend all your time as a coach doing what an assessor would do or doing what he does to actually score completely the section, but that you want to have enough information to feel confident in whatever score you're giving them, because it's being used as a sort of a green light to allow them to apply for a level 3 rating if they qualify. And so you want to feel really confident that they would be able to meet the minimum score requirements in workforce before you would say, you know, we want a goal of a level 3 this program year. So it's sort of finding that balance between don't spend all your time as a coach doing what an assessor is doing, and really giving it your best guess based on the information presented to you and sort of the spirit of what the director is telling you. Like if the director is like, oh yeah, I've got all these binders full of all my workforce qualifications and I know that I'm all set, then you know you can probably score that a little bit higher than, oh, you mean I have to have documentation for my workforce? I'm trying to balance that. I don't know if Michelle, if you have any other thoughts on that.
Just basically go by the information of what the director says. If they're fairly confident, that's fine. They're the ones that are going to have to figure out the whole workforce area. One suggestion I know other coaches have used is to not look at the credentialing piece at that moment in time. Look at the underlining pieces that are in that workforce qualification. So look at professional development plans, figuring out if those things are in place and not focus so much on the credentialing piece, because at that point it's not guaranteed that the staff that any of them are going to meet credentials at that point.
Right. Okay.
So because we're only looking at, they only need to make a minimum of like 6 points to be predicted that they will be ready for a level 3. So looking at those underlining pieces are going to be a lot more useful than to look at the credentialing piece at that moment in time.
Okay.
Thank you, Michelle. And so just so you know, Michelle is getting the 6 points from this table, and that gives kind of a minimum number of points. This minimum number of points is not the minimum to actually earn a level 3 at that exact moment, but it's sort of the predictive value of, you know, if they're scoring at least a 6, working with a coach throughout the program year, they should be able to get up to an 8 by whenever you set the goal to apply for the rating. So you're setting the goal on here. You're going to set the goal, like if the goal was a level 3, a new field pops up that is the level 3 through 5 app submission deadline. So you want to make sure that the deadline is when that director feels confident that they can, by, you know, December 31st, they can hit the submit button on the L3 through 5 application and be ready to rate at any point within the next 60 to 120 days is sort of the range. So that's kind of what you're setting as the target. So you might also set alternative pathway level 3 or alternative pathway level 4, which means that they're not actually hitting a submit button for the L3 through 5 application, but maybe they're doing a different route to a level 3 or a level 4. So if you select level 2, you don't have to put in that date because the level 2, doesn't require an L3 through 5 application submission. So that's what that field is trying to capture.
Okay. Okay.
And then none of these are going to calculate for you. So if you're putting in 3 points here, it won't just calculate level 2 for you, but that's why you've got this guide will tell you sort of what those are. So if they're scoring, 2 points, then they're not getting to a level 3. So hopefully that. It's a really good question, though. A lot of people have been asking similar questions.
Okay, thank you. I think that helps me.
Great. Yeah, and so I hope everyone has had a chance to review this. It really helps break down the steps. And this was produced by a coach, so it's kind of from a coach perspective. All right, let's see if we've got any other questions rolling in. Oh, that's a good, we have a nice tip. So a tip from Tiffany is we found it helpful to email the assessment to the director prior to our first coaching visit. That's a really great idea. And then we have another question, which is, although we want coaching hours to be on higher level quality improvement activities, we can use RTT coaching hours for initial assessments to get folks going in these early years of Color to Shine. Yes? Yes, correct. So actually it's required if the site has access to Race to the Top quality improvement funds, you use the Race to the Top coaching hours first for the coaching assessment. So any site that's a level 2 or higher should have access to Race to the Top funds, and so they should be receiving their coaching assessment through Race to the Top. But for your other programs like School Readiness and CCAP and ITQA, those level 1 sites that don't have access to Race to the Top QI funds yet, you would want to use those specific coaching hours from School Readiness, CCAP, or ITQA for the coaching assessment. But the coaching assessment is required for 100% of participants in any CDHS QI funding stream before any spending occurs. Okay, so we have another question. We have been editing funds for sites and sugar to match our funding list here at ACECC, and now it is not letting us edit. Can you please help us out with this? We are going through the provider requisitions under the account page. So, Holly, you're welcome to actually unmute yourself if you'd like to talk through this, but when we released the transfers module, we tried to make it really clear that you shouldn't be editing the requisition value directly. You should be using the transfers module so that you can document the justification for why you're changing the amount on the requisition record, because CDHS is requiring that as part of the grant management. So that is why we did lock down that permission, because you shouldn't be editing on the requisition record itself. You should be transferring funds to and from the discretionary pooled QI requisition. So Holly, do you have any further questions on that, or do you want to talk through that a little bit more? Has anyone else been editing directly the requisition value instead of using the transfer module? Doesn't look like it, but we did hear from, sorry, I do not have a mic, but yes, can you walk us through this? So, so really if you go over to the Sugar Training Guides and you click on Requisitions and Transfers, this really does walk you through all the steps of the different kinds of transfers. So it's going to give you kind of an overview of what the purpose of the requisition module is and why we're using the transfer module. So the transfer module allows you to transfer funds to and from requisitions and keep a nice audit trail of those transfers and their justification. So it kind of gives you some information about requisitions assigned to providers that are based on the allocation formula as dictated by the OEC grants. And then it kind of goes into pooled council requisitions, which are those discretionary QI funds that can be up to 20% of your direct QI that's assigned to a provider. And remember, those are all the ones that were created at $1 and 1 hour. And when we sent out this guide, we gave some guidance on that you should update those once you have a better sense of the volume of providers that you're supporting and what their amounts are. So let's see, that's in this guide as well. Maybe we can just kind of walk through this guide a little bit. So this does give a really nice description of all the different fields on the requisition. You do need to pay attention to the fact that only approved status requisitions will show on the EC Connect portal, which will allow you to spend against them. The different types of requisitions, all of the totals are here and described. The expiration date you can control, so you get to decide when the requisitions will come off of EC Connect portal. So a lot of times you might want to have the deadline be like mid-April so that you have time to wrap up and close the grant. It also indicates who it's assigned to, so it's really important here that the default for all the requisitions was the QI Navigator of the site. But a lot of you did not have QI Navigators in the accounts when the requisitions were being generated. So it's really, really important that you make sure that you have somebody assigned to all the requisitions. And typically the coach requisition should be assigned to the actual coach performing the coaching hours so they can use it from like a workflow perspective. And then the QI dollars are typically assigned to the QI Navigator. So related to coaching requisitions, there is an assignment type that all defaults to internal coaching with the assumption that the coaches are your personnel as opposed to external coaches who are contracted, who you pay a coaching fee. So if you have external coaches that you're using, you want to go through your coaching requisitions and assign those external coaches to the external coaching assignment type and actually update the assigned to field to that external coach. External coaches can use Sugar. They just need to pay for the Sugar license cost. That is over here on the coaching in Trello, Sugar licenses for coaches, external and internal. All internal coaches should request a Sugar license. The cost of the license is covered under the grant for the FY15-16 grant year. But external coaches need to pay for their own Sugar license or have the council pay on their behalf. And on the license sign-up form, there's now options for indicating if your council is going to pay for the Sugar license on their behalf or if the external contractor will pay for it. But you know, if your external contractor is charging you a significant fee, then probably they should cover that cost themselves. If they're not, then maybe you want to cover that as their council. Okay, so if we come back over here, let's get rid of some of this stuff. So if we want to look at some requisitions, I'm going to pull up some DECC requisitions. So actually, here's some examples. So you can see there's external coaching versus internal coaching. And actually, this is a pooled requisition, so you can do this as well, where we use Clayton Early Learning Center to do all of our coaching. This is actually through the Denver Preschool Program for Denver Public Schools, which is our school district out here. And so this is assigned to Tony, who works at Clayton Early Learning, and the type is external coach. And we do have to put in the hourly rate. So for external coaching, when it's counting down what's been used, it will count down not only the hours, but also the dollars associated. So that's kind of the important distinguishing piece between external and internal coaching requisition. All right, so are there any questions on that? Let's see, it looks like we do. Looks like that question is related to different things. So does anyone have any questions about coaching requisitions, changing the value of requisitions through transfers, which is all included in this guide? So you are not supposed to be able to edit the value of the requisition directly on the requisition. You do need to use the transfer module to do that. So if you take a look at the instructions, then you can hopefully get through that. But if not, you're welcome to email support directly. So there is another question, which is we are looking at the dollars allocated to each site to ensure that we have the budgeted funds, but we have 3 sites that we are unable to see either the dollars or the coaching hours. How can we see this for these 3 programs? Angie, if you haven't already submitted, I know that there is a ticket through the support email that was similar to this. I'm not sure if that was you or not, but if you haven't already submitted a support ticket, then please do. Probably what's going on is there's something related to permissions that isn't working quite right, but we can figure that out, and usually it's a really quick fix. So you should, of course, be able to see all of the requisition values for all of your sites. Okay, so we had another question. We are needing to decrease the funds assigned to sites, but the funds we need to transfer out of site requisition exceed what we have budgeted in discretionary funds. So is there a way to just decrease the funds but not transfer the funds anywhere else? Yeah, so basically we're actually working, we are working on an idea for an enhancement that will allow basically you to kind of indicate your total direct QI, and then it can like provide a check and balance for you. But in the meantime, what you can do is just transfer it all up to your pooled discretionary QI position, and then on that one, you should be able to edit the amount. Let me know if you can't, or I'll test that. That's a pretty new permission set, so there might be some issues with that. But basically, your pooled QI discretionary, you should be able to edit that as needed. So then basically you would transfer the dollars up to the pooled discretionary QI, and then you would reduce the pooled discretionary QI so that those dollars aren't reflected anywhere, basically. But we are working on a slightly more sophisticated version of that that would be tied to the actual funding stream record and your approved budget through OEC. That's sort of a next step, is getting the funding stream synced from the Salesforce database, because the program officers at OEC will be using the funding stream module in Salesforce actually to help track approved council budgets. And then when we do that, then we'll be able to have a section of the approved budget that is direct QI, and then it will basically provide you a little check and balance where it will tell you if your approved requisitions are over your approved budget, which will be really cool, but it's not implemented yet. Okay. Okay, so we got some thank yous. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions related to this topic? Okay, great. And definitely, I think I mentioned on one of the last calls that the transfer module is really brand new. So please let us know if you're having any trouble with it at all, or if it's not making sense, or anything at all, because it is really, really new. But it really is, it's supposed to act like a bank transfer. You're literally kind of taking money or coaching hours and moving it somewhere else for money or coaching hours. So it should be a relatively straightforward process, but if you're running into any trouble, please let us know. Okay. Okay, so where can we find information on how to invite providers to EC Connect? So we have not released that information yet, and that's because we are still testing the spending. We do have the spending guide complete, and we will be sending this out to everyone, but we are really testing a lot of things because, like we mentioned last week, we have really done a lot of enhancements to the QI request form to kind of match the restrictions of each grant to what they can request in the form. So we don't want people to go in and start using it until it's really been tested quite a bit, and we have a few people who are helping us test and a few additional people who have indicated that they're interested in helping us test, so we will continue that process. And I think we mentioned on last week's call, if you have any spending that needs to be occurring right now for QI requests, send it to the support and we will help you enter that into Sugar. So it's not that you can't enter anything right now, but we're just not releasing it full scale until it's been tested really well. But in the module guide, there is a section called Invite Childcare Providers to Register in EC Connect portal. So we do have a whole section on that. We just don't want providers to be invited to the portal until development has settled a little bit. But this is what the portal looks like. This is what we demoed last week. So we have, when you, we can set an email login for every childcare site, and in most cases that's already been done. And then what we'll do is we have a email template that we suggest you send out that includes the process for resetting the password, and we don't tell them it's resetting the password. I think we phrase it something like, set your initial password, and so then they can go in and define what password they want, and then they'll be able to log in. So it's a really simple process. They don't even have to go through and create an account because we technically already have all the information we need to let them create an account. So we've basically created all the accounts for them, and then we'll just have them go in and set a password in order to be able to access it. So once this has gone through some additional testing, then we will get that sent out as soon as possible, and then people will be able to access sort of the QIP dashboard where it shows all the QIP goals. It will show any available QI funds, the ability to request quality improvement funds, or any recommendations from their coaches. And then when you come over here, you can actually request dollars. Let's see. So it will give you the live balance that this provider has here on any requisitions that they have. So in this case, it's $585. They can click for a description of quality improvement purchases that are allowable. They can also select whether or not they want the request to be payable to themselves as the childcare site, and then they need to make sure they look at the reimbursement checklist. Or direct to an approved vendor, and there's a list here. This approved vendor list is controlled through Sugar. Approved vendor is a vendor type, and we have actually gotten some questions on approved vendors. So we have a document that we are working on, and this is not inclusive of all the approved vendors yet, which is why we haven't released it yet. But our team has been doing a lot of work with a lot of early childhood vendors to negotiate even better discounts or free shipping or good terms for all councils. And that's one of the really great things about having ECLA as an entity to help support all the councils, is that we can do this sort of bulk negotiation, which is really helpful. And I believe some of you may have received phone calls. If you don't have current accounts with vendors like Lakeshore, Kaplan, or Discount, then they're calling you to make sure it's okay to set up an account that would be linked to Sugar, so that you can process a lot of your orders through a very easy workflow, as opposed to sending a lot of manual emails and things like that. So we'll be kind of continuing work behind the scenes to make sure that that's going very smoothly, and we can get that out. But the difference between preferred vendors and approved vendors is basically the level of discount and their relationship with councils. All the preferred vendors typically will provide sponsorships of early childhood events or do different things like that. And so that's why they're preferred. And then approved vendors are people who we have, you know, accounts set up with and have terms set up with, and, you know, people who are used to working with, have a relationship with. So as a council, you of course should be able to add your own approved vendors if they are different from this list. So we will be providing guidance on how to do that through Sugar, and all you need to do, like if we go look at, let's pull up Lakeshore, for example. So if we pull up Lakeshore, there we go, then we can see that they are an approved vendor here, and so that allows them to show on the portal. And under admin, we can actually indicate what the types of quality improvement that vendor provides. And so when we come back over here to the form, when I select Lakeshore, then it's gonna let me know, like, you know, that Lakeshore doesn't provide coaching reimbursement expenses, right? But Lakeshore does, of course, do learning materials, so there's no error message here. So we can kind of help guide the process of our, you know, what makes sense for which vendor and that kind of thing on the form itself. We are also working on what's called a punch-out process with Lakeshore and Kaplan, where if they were to select Lakeshore, there would be a big button that shows up that says Shop with Lakeshore, and you'd click on it, and the provider can actually complete all of their shopping through the shopping cart online experience with Lakeshore, and then Lakeshore will send the information back to Sugar so that we can review the order and approve the order. And then once the order is approved, then it would automatically go over to Lakeshore to be filled. So, so that is something that we're also working on. The planned launch for that is early November. We think November 1st, but we'll say early November just in case. But it'll be really much more user-friendly from a provider perspective, because they don't have to type in their order list. They basically just go shop and then return the cart back to Sugar. And it will limit them, so if they've only got $585 available, it will limit them to only being able to shop up to $585. We are allowing a $50 overage, so in this case, there's $585 available, but we would allow for up to $635 to be submitted, just so that we don't hold up the process, because usually as a council there's some way you can figure out, like, oh, they're short by this much, maybe I can take from my discretionary or support it through some other means to kind of allow them to complete their whole order. And also, just as a general best practice, you don't really want to prevent people from submitting. So we're trying to do that. And then the other piece sort of related to the form and requirements is that there are a lot of required attachments. As we all know, there's a lot of really important documentation requirements for government grants. And so this form is actually smart enough to know if I'm requesting a capital improvement expense, I need to have 3 competitive bids, and I need to verify some different things, like if work is completed and if this is the initial deposit. And we've recently tightened this up a little bit based on last year through the CCAP pilot. We kind of want to make sure that, you know, they're using a reputable vendor and everything is in good shape, and then they can put in the information. And then down below, because they're doing a capital improvement request, we can require a before photo, a capital improvement detail bid, and a detail invoice. And in order to attach that, all they have to do is come in here and attach a file, and it will actually attach right to the spending record in Sugar. So it will really prevent a lot of that back and forth. Now, as a QI navigator or whomever you have checking this on your side, you still need to go and open up that record and see that it's actually the correct type of documentation so that you can approve it. You can set the status to ready for approval, your manager can approve it, and then it can go to finance. So it all kind of goes back to that business process model where you can see, you know, the coaching happens first, that informs the QIP, all the spending is related to the QIP, the spending is submitted by either the provider themselves or the QI navigator or the coach on the provider's behalf. And then it kind of comes into Sugar. You can review the order, you can place the order, you can set the order ready for approval. It will get approved by your manager. The manager will send it to finance, and then finance can export it for their accounting system. So, so that's kind of it in a sort of a high-level overview. So it looks like we have some questions. Okay, so will they be able to see everything coaches put in Sugar? I think you're referring to providers, and no, the only thing that they can see, we'll come over to a coaching detail record. So the only thing that they can see, and it's actually noted in Sugar, is the provider next steps. And it says right here, populates coaching recommendations in QIP dashboard. So that is the only field that is public. Everything else is private. So coaches might put a lot of different kinds of notes in a coaching log. If you want anything to be private, not shared with providers, do not include it in provider next steps. So, so that's how you would do that. So basically that would come over here to this QIP dashboard. And there's any. So here's some, for example, that are showing some next steps. And this is a known bug. It should be listed in date order, so that's being corrected. All right. Okay, so it looks like there's some additional questions. Is there a specific place in Sugar for coaches to put information not released to site? So any other field on a coaching record is private. So I think there's this coach next steps and notes or description. You can use any of those fields for your own personal private notes as a coach. But remember, I mean, you know, they're still open for you know, any of your program managers, your QI navigators, any of your council staff, the state, you know, like that's all information that anyone else in your organization can access. It's just not public. So it's protected in that it's within your council and your funder relationship, but would not go out to providers. All right, any other questions on that? I know we've jumped around a bit, but we just want to be responsive to the kinds of questions that you have instead of having such a set agenda. So hopefully this has been helpful. Oh, good. Much appreciated was a comment. Thank you. So I think if there aren't any other questions, you know, I think we could wrap up a little bit early today instead of going all the way to 3:30. We are really excited to be coming out on the road, especially because I know Michelle is joining us for our first training in Granby on Tuesday, so that'll be really great. And we have really packed houses for all the trainings, so we're so excited. I think it's going to be a really great opportunity to actually be in person and hopefully make this make even more sense and just kind of work with you through whatever things that you want to work on. We do have a set agenda, but there are a lot of interactive parts of the training. So hopefully it won't just be a lot of us talking at you, but really we'll get to kind of demonstrate how the systems really work through some fun interactive activities. So we're looking forward to it. All right, well, I think we'll stay on the line for another 4 minutes to see if any other questions come through. But if not, we will just go ahead and end at 3 p.m. All right, thanks everyone. We're getting a lot of thank yous and sign-offs. So I think we're all set for today. I hope everyone has a great weekend and happy Friday.